You think the men at the top of Delta Force arrive there as legends. They do not. They arrive as proven killers, proven leaders, proven survivors, and then the unit strips even that identity away. The hardest truth is not that Delta demands excellence. It is that excellence is only the price of admission. By the time you stand near that door, you have already done enough for an ordinary military career to be considered extraordinary. You have fought in places most people will never hear named. You have carried men who did not make it home. You have learned how fast life disappears in a hallway, on a rooftop, in the half second between seeing a hand move and understanding why, and still none of that makes you special here. Inside this world, nobody cares about your past unless it survives pressure. Nobody cares how many tabs you wear, how many deployments you stacked, or how many doors you kicked before sunrise. What matters is whether you can keep moving when there is no praise, no certainty, no audience, and no room for hesitation. This is not a story about rank in the usual sense. It is a story about what happens when a man spends years walking toward the hardest thing he can find, only to discover that the hardest thing was never the mission. It was the transformation, the slow removal of comfort, ego, fear, softness, and eventually pieces of life that do not grow back. This is your life through every stage of Delta Force, not as a title, but as a cost. Before Delta ever looks at you, the Army has already tested whether you belong among dangerous men. You do not come here fresh from promise. You come here after years of being measured in harder ways. You started in places where standards were already high enough to break most people. Infantry, airborne school, ranger school, maybe special forces, maybe the 75th Ranger Regiment, maybe another corner of the special operations world where weakness is exposed quickly and remembered forever. You learned early that talent means very little without endurance. So you built yourself the slow way. Long days on ranges, endless repetitions, heavy runs before sunrise, packs cutting into your shoulders. Boots worn down by training areas, airfields, mountain trails, and streets in countries your family only knew from headlines, if they knew the countries at all. You earned credibility one miserable step at a time. Then came deployments. Not one, several. Enough to turn instinct into habit. Enough to teach you the difference between fear and function. You learned how a room feels before entry, how a convoy sounds when tension is wrong, how silence on a radio can be more alarming than screaming. You learned how to stay useful when exhausted, when angry, when cold, when carrying more weight than your body wanted to bear. Men around you began to trust you, and in combat, trust is the only praise that matters. By your mid-20s, your record already looks finished to ordinary people. Tabs, schools, team time, real missions, real losses, real moments where hesitation could have buried someone beside you. In another unit, that resume might define you. Here, it only explains why your name is even worth noticing. That is the first truth of Delta. The unit does not go searching for potential, it searches for proof. Proof that you have already performed under strain. Proof that you can be sharpened further without breaking in the wrong direction. Proof that when the stakes rise, you do not become louder or prouder. You become calmer, more useful, more exact. Before the door ever opens, you have already spent years becoming the kind of man most soldiers will never have to become. And still, for Delta, that is only the beginning. The invitation does not arrive with glory attached to it. It appears quietly, almost carelessly, as if the Army is trying not to draw attention to what it is asking. A notice on a board, a time, a building, a briefing with no famous unit name, no proud insignia, no language meant to impress anyone. That is what makes it more powerful. The more important the mission, the less it needs advertisement. You walk into the room with other men who already stand out everywhere else. Rangers, Green Berets, hard men with combat in their posture, and confidence in the way they sit. At the front stands a man in civilian clothes. He does not waste words. He does not sell a dream. In fact, he does the opposite. He tells you almost nothing. The selection is brutal. The attrition rate is high. The unit will not be explained. The mission set will not be discussed. If selected, you will join an organization whose work is buried beneath layers of silence, and most of what you do will never belong to you in public. No headlines, no stories, no identity you can wear outside the gate. For most men, the lack of information would be enough to walk away. For the kind of man sitting in that room, it has the opposite effect. Mystery sharpens the challenge. The silence around the unit does not push you back. It pulls you forward. Because by then, you already know something about yourself. You are drawn to difficult things, especially when nobody can promise what waits on the other side. And when they give the date to show up, you already know you will be there. Selection does not begin by trying to inspire you. It begins by removing everything that has ever helped you keep going. No speeches, no aggressive cadre trying to drag energy out of you, no one screaming in your face to manufacture adrenaline. Delta does not need to know whether you can perform while someone is motivating you. It needs to know what remains when no one cares whether you continue or stop. So they put you in the mountains with weight on your back and distance ahead of you, and they let the silence do its work. The terrain around Fort Bragg is not theatrical. It does not need to be. Mile after mile, the ground rises and falls just enough to punish your legs without offering drama. You carry your ruck, your water, your weapon, and your own thoughts. Every day the numbers get worse. More distance, more fatigue, more time alone inside your own head. The strain builds in layers. First your shoulders burn, then your hips ache. Then your feet begin sending up that deep, dull pain that tells you damage is no longer a possibility, but a fact already in progress. And still, none of that is the real test. The real test is uncertainty. They do not tell you how you are doing. They do not tell you whether your pace is strong or weak. They do not tell you how far the next point is, how close you are to failure, or whether the man beside you yesterday is now gone because he quit or because he was quietly selected ahead of you. The cadre watch, record, and say nothing. Their indifference becomes a pressure heavier than the ruck itself. That silence begins to strip away useful illusions. You stop imagining that effort earns recognition. You stop expecting reassurance. You stop waiting for some external sign that says you are still in the fight. Every step has to come from somewhere deeper than pride. Pride burns fast. Anger burns fast. Even fear eventually burns out. What remains is something colder, a decision repeated without emotion. Keep moving. Find the point. Check the map. Walk again. Then comes land navigation alone. No team, no chatter, no one to absorb your frustration when the terrain stops matching the picture in your mind. Just compass, map, grid coordinate, and the consequences of being wrong. You move through woods where every slope starts to resemble the last one. Fatigue blurs judgment. Small errors threaten to become large ones. At each point, a man marks your card and hands you another coordinate without offering a single useful word. The message is clear. Solve it yourself. Men quit out there. Good men, capable men who would still be exceptional in almost any other unit. They sit down at the edge of a trail, raise a hand, and disappear into the back of a truck. No shame, no audience, no final speech, just absence. By the time selection is over, your body is damaged, but that is not what Delta wanted to see. They wanted to see whether you could keep functioning after motivation died, whether you could continue when effort no longer felt heroic, only necessary, whether in total silence you could still manufacture direction. When they finally tell you that you made it, the feeling is not triumph. It is emptiness mixed with understanding. You have not won anything. You have only proven that you are ready to be tested in a different way. Passing selection does not earn you belonging. It only earns you entry into a place designed to take apart everything that got you there and rebuild it for a more precise purpose. OTC is not a reward. It is a conversion process. The man who survived the mountains arrives with confidence, habits, instincts, and a way of seeing himself. The course starts cutting into all of it. This is where skill stops being measured by competence and starts being measured by consequence. You do not simply learn close quarters battle. You learn it until ordinary proficiency looks sloppy. Angles tighten, timing compresses, muzzle discipline becomes absolute. The margin for error shrinks until it feels almost cruel. A second too slow is failure. A few inches offline is failure. A hesitation before entering a room is failure. You move through structures again and again until motion no longer feels like a decision. It feels like an electrical response. Door, corner, threshold, target, non-target, move. And the pressure is not abstract. OTC does not teach you in the comfortable language of simulation. It teaches you with enough realism to make mistakes feel expensive. You learn to shoot with people near the line of fire, to separate threat from hostage in fractions of a second, to trust your eyes and hands under stress that punishes uncertainty. Speed alone means nothing here. Speed without control gets people killed. The course burns that lesson into you until your nervous system starts obeying it automatically. Then it widens the battlefield. Delta is not built only for hitting doors, so OTC begins forcing you into a different kind of professionalism. Surveillance, cover identities, counter-surveillance routes, foreign cities, civilian clothes, cafes, intersections, hotel lobbies, crowded streets where the right move is not aggression but invisibility. You learn that that violence is only one language the unit speaks. The other is patience, adaptation, knowing how to exist in plain sight without leaving a mark. There is more, breaching in every form: mechanical, ballistic, explosive, thermal. Advanced driving that turns a vehicle into both weapon and escape route. Trauma medicine that goes far beyond keeping a buddy alive for a few minutes. Here you are expected to solve catastrophic injuries in ugly environments, fast, calmly, with blood on your hands and noise all around you. You are trained to keep people alive in the kind of moments where panic would be the most natural response in the world. By the end of OTC, the most important change is not that you can do more, it is that you think differently. Problems look smaller, chaos looks slower. Fear still exists, but it no longer leads. Precision leads, repetition leads, discipline leads. There is no grand graduation waiting for you, no family day, no applause. Just an assignment, a squadron, and the quiet understanding that the unit has started to accept you, not because you impressed it, but because it has begun to reshape you into something it can use. The first thing you learn inside the squadron is that selection and OTC bought you access, not status. Outside this building, your resume would make people listen. Inside it, you are simply the new man in a room full of operators who were already exceptional before you ever arrived. Men with years of combat behind them. Men who move with a kind of calm that does not look dramatic until you realize how much danger it has already survived. You are assigned to an assault troop, and the pace changes immediately. Training here does not feel like preparation for a future event. It feels like a permanent state of existence. The cycle never really stops. Shoot, move, rehearse, debrief, repeat. The standards are so high that even small mistakes feel like personal failures. A late step on entry, a muzzle drifting an inch where it should not. A moment of hesitation before committing to the next room. Nobody needs to yell. The unit has no interest in loud correction when quiet standards are already merciless enough. That becomes the culture you live inside. Competence is expected. Humility is enforced by reality. Every man around you knows something you do not know yet, has seen something you have not seen yet, or has solved problems under pressure you have not faced yet. So you watch, you listen, you shut up more than you speak. You understand that respect here is not given because you passed a course. It is accumulated through consistency. The repetition is endless, but it is not mindless. Every run through the kill house is shaping reflex. Every rehearsal is stripping waste from motion. Every debrief is an argument against complacency. Eventually, you begin to understand why the unit lives this way. In the kind of work Delta does, there is no room for discovering weakness on target. Weakness has to die in training first. So you adapt. Your ego gets smaller. Your standards get sharper. You stop measuring yourself against the soldier you used to be and start measuring yourself against the room. That room is unforgiving. It is also the reason you will become better than you thought possible if you can survive being the least experienced man in it long enough. Your first deployment with the squadron is where the remaining myths die. Until then, some part of you still carries an old picture of elite warfare. Something clean, sharp, and heroic. Training was violent, but it was still training. This is the first time the machine opens for real, and you step inside it. The mission arrives in fragments. A briefing room, a target packet, grainy photos, routes, timings, names you have never heard before and are not expected to remember for long. The target is important tonight. Tomorrow someone else will be. That is how this world works. Nothing stays sacred for more than a few hours because the next operation is already forming before the first one is finished. You load onto the aircraft in darkness. The rotors beat the air so hard it feels physical, like pressure against your chest. Inside the cabin, nobody talks more than necessary. You check your gear again, not because you forgot anything, but because ritual steadies the mind. Across from you are men who have done this enough times that their stillness looks almost unnatural. You borrow calm from them without admitting it. Then the aircraft drops into the target area. Fast, controlled, final. The breach happens with such violence and precision that your body moves before thought can catch up. Door gone. Entry made. Angles cleared. Muzzle up. Feet moving. Rooms collapsing one after another into practice sequences. There is shouting, impact, motion, and then that strange compression of time that only happens in real danger, where 90 seconds feels both instantaneous and endless. You find the man you came for. He is not a symbol. He is not history. He is just another objective inside another room. Flex cuffs, bag over the head, extraction, wheels up. A few hours later, you are back on a base cleaning your weapon under ugly light, chewing something dry and tasteless, while the adrenaline drains out of your bloodstream. No speech follows. No one tells you that you crossed some invisible line tonight, but you know you did, because now you understand the truth. This work does not make heroes. It makes professionals who enter violence, finish it quickly, and disappear before the world even knows it happened. After a few years in the unit, raw skill stops being the thing that defines you. Everyone here can shoot. Everyone here can move. Everyone here can stay calm in the kind of moments that would overwhelm almost anyone outside the room. What separates you now is not talent. It is precision under pressure so refined that it starts to look unnatural. You have been on enough raids that the chaos no longer feels chaotic. Your eyes begin sorting information faster than conscious thought. A doorway is no longer just a doorway. It is angles, danger areas, possible movement, likely concealment, and a problem that must be solved before the next second arrives. A hand moving toward a waistband is not just a motion, it is a decision tree unfolding in real time, and you have learned to read it with terrifying speed. That kind of accuracy does not come from confidence, it comes from exposure. Enough missions to understand how tiny mistakes grow teeth. Enough briefings, rehearsals, breaches, and debriefs to see the pattern beneath the adrenaline. You stop feeling impressed by intensity. Intensity is common. What matters is whether your judgment remains clean while everything around you turns violent. Your body changes too, not just in strength but in sensitivity. You notice tension in a room before anyone speaks. You catch the wrong rhythm in a footstep, the wrong hesitation in a man's posture, the wrong silence from a teammate who is usually talking. Your instincts stop being dramatic. They become quiet and exact, like instruments that have been calibrated too many times to lie. And with that comes a colder understanding of what experience really means here. It is not a stack of stories. It is not status. It is the ability to do lethal work without wasting motion, emotion, or time. The best operators do not look wild. They look controlled. They do not rush. They arrive at the right answer faster than other men can even understand the problem. That is when you realize you are no longer just surviving missions. You are becoming the kind of man younger operators study without saying it out loud. Not every mission begins with a breach. Some begin with stillness so complete it feels like punishment. After years of assault work, you learn that Delta's power is not only in how fast it can strike, it is also in how long it can watch without being seen. This is the side of the job most outsiders never imagine. Civilian clothes instead of body armor, a cheap vehicle instead of a helicopter, a rented room, a crowded street, a market, a cafe, a patch of dead ground overlooking a compound that matters more than it appears to. The work becomes observation stripped down to discipline. Who enters? Who leaves? Which car arrives twice a day? Which light turns on late? Which guard smokes at the same corner every night? You are building a pattern of life from details so small that most people would never notice them. Sometimes the work is urban. You blend into the movement of a foreign city and make invisibility look ordinary. Sometimes it is worse than that. A hide site dug into dirt. Hours becoming a full day, then another. Your body begins protesting long before the mission ends. Your legs cramp, your back tightens, sweat cools and sticks to your clothes. Insects find you. Time slows until every urge to shift position feels enormous. But movement is risk. Noise is risk. Comfort is risk. So you stay still. You whisper only when necessary. You eat little, drink carefully, and manage your own body like it is another piece of equipment that could compromise the task if handled poorly. The patience required is a different kind of violence. Assault work compresses pressure into seconds. Recon stretches pressure across hours and days until your own nervous system becomes the enemy. That is why this kind of mission reveals something important. It proves that control is not just about pulling a trigger cleanly. It is also about mastering the desperate human need to move, speak, adjust, and relieve discomfort. Anyone can imagine speed as elite. Far fewer understand that true professionalism may look like doing absolutely nothing flawlessly for longer than most men can endure. At some point, the job changes in a way no course can fully prepare you for. You are no longer measured only by how well you move, shoot, or think for yourself. Now other men are tied to your judgment, their preparation, their timing, their confidence, and sometimes whether they live through the next 10 seconds all begin leaning against decisions that come out of your mouth. You become a team leader, and leadership here has very little to do with ceremony. There is no dramatic shift in identity, no speech that announces your arrival. The pressure simply settles onto you and stays there. You receive the target package, photos, timelines, entry points, signals intelligence, human reporting, fragments of a life reduced to a pattern the team will soon step into. You study all of it until the objective starts to feel familiar, even though you have never physically stood inside it. Then you build the plan. Who moves first? Who cuts where? What happens if the breach fails? What happens if the target moves? What happens if the hallway is blocked, the stairwell is trapped, the room occupancy is wrong, the lights die, the radios distort, the aircraft is delayed, the compound contains more people than expected? A good plan is not built on optimism. It is built on respect for how quickly reality can break apart. You rehearse until the team can move through the objective almost without language. And still, deep down, you know the truth. Rehearsal is only rehearsal. Real life adds confusion that no mock-up can perfectly create. That is why the burden of command in a small unit feels so intimate. When things go wrong, there is rarely time to ask permission. There is only the next choice. On target, that choice may come in the ugliest form imaginable. A figure turns a corner holding something in his hands. Your man looks to you for half a heartbeat, or maybe he does not even have time for that. The call is still yours because your standards shaped his instincts long before this moment arrived. Shoot. Hold, shift, move. Those words are short, but the consequences behind them can last for decades, and afterward the mission ends, but leadership does not. You replay every decision in the quiet, the correct ones, the questionable ones, the ones that looked obvious in the debrief room and felt impossible in the hallway. You carry them because that is part of the role. Not just guiding men into danger, but absorbing the weight of uncertainty so they can keep functioning the next time the door opens. That is when you understand leadership in Delta is not authority. It is accountability compressed into seconds, then stretched across years. The longer you stay, the more dangerous you become in the exact ways the unit values most. You are calmer under pressure, faster without looking rushed, harder to surprise, harder to shake. Younger operators watch how you move, how you speak on the radio, how little energy you waste, and they begin to understand what experience really looks like when it has been forged correctly. It is not loud, it is not theatrical, it is clean. But while your usefulness increases, something else is being spent at the same time. Your body starts keeping the record your service file never will. Old injuries stop feeling old because they never truly left. Knees with too many hard landings in them, shoulders worn down by armor, ladders, fast ropes, and repetition. Hearing dulled by blasts that seem manageable in the moment. A back that stiffens after flights, after long vehicle movements, after nights spent carrying weight through structures built for ambush. Nothing fails all at once. It erodes. Quietly, professionally, the way everything does in this world. You adapt because that is what operators do. You stop talking about pain as if it matters. You work around it, tape it, brace it, stretch it, ignore it. Learn which movements trigger it and which routines keep it under control long enough to finish the cycle. The culture rewards function, not complaint, so you become even better at hiding damage than you are at admitting it. The harder part is not physical. It is cumulative. Faces you still remember. Voices you still expect to hear on the radio even though they are gone. Friends who are not just teammates, but part of the architecture of your life. Men whose wives call you because you understand the silence their husbands lived in. Men whose children know your face for reasons that no child should need to. Loss in a place like this does not stay abstract. It settles into routines, into hallways, into empty spots in briefing rooms, into photographs on walls that force memory into your morning whether you asked for it or not, so you become something the younger men need. Not only a skilled operator, but proof that composure can survive grief. You teach without speeches. You teach through timing, through restraint, through the steadiness in your voice when plans begin breaking apart. They learn from the way you handle bad news, not just good entries. By now, the unit trusts you deeply. That trust is earned. It is also expensive, because the same years that made you sharper have also made you heavier inside, carrying names, damage, and silence that do not disappear when the mission ends. At the command level, war stops feeling like a sequence of rooms and starts feeling like a machine that has to keep running night after night without breaking the men inside it. You are no longer responsible for only a team or a single stack moving through one objective. Now you are responsible for an entire squadron, multiple moving parts, and the invisible coordination required to turn intelligence into action before the window closes. Everything widens. Helicopters, assault teams, signals intercepts, quick reaction forces, air support, analysts working against time, other government elements that may have touched the target long before your operators ever see his face. The mission is no longer just a breach. It is a network, and you are one of the people keeping that network coherent under pressure. Orders may begin far above you, but they become real at your level. A decision made in Washington can land on your desk as a target package that must be translated into something men can actually execute in darkness, in hostile terrain, in a country that may never publicly admit you were there. That translation is its own burden. Strategy sounds clean from far away. Execution never is, and the tempo is relentless. One hit leads to exploitation. Exploitation leads to fresh intelligence. Fresh intelligence leads to another raid, another vehicle movement, another aircraft launch, another briefing delivered to tired men whose faces reveal less fatigue than their bodies actually carry. This is where command becomes partly tactical and partly human. You are managing risk, timing, and violence, but you are also managing depletion. Reaction times slow. Patience wears thin. Judgment gets more expensive with every night of poor sleep and repeated stress. The dangerous part is that the men will rarely complain. Elite operators are built to keep going. That makes them powerful, but it also makes them easy to overuse. So command here means seeing what they will not say out loud. It means recognizing where before it becomes failure. It means balancing mission urgency against the quiet erosion sustained combat creates. At this level, leadership is no longer about being the best man through the door. It is about making sure the right men go through the right door at the right time for reasons that justify the cost. When you leave the unit, the departure is almost offensively quiet. No public ceremony, no speech that explains what you gave, no official summary that could tell a civilian what those years actually contained. On paper, your service dissolves into bland language, administrative language, the kind that hides more than it reveals. To the outside world, you were assigned somewhere forgettable. To the men who know, that silence says everything. At first, civilian life looks simple enough. A new job, maybe. Contracting, security consulting, a government role that feels strangely familiar under a different name. Better money, cleaner clothes, fewer briefings in windowless rooms. You tell yourself the transition will be manageable because you have survived harder things than traffic, office meetings, and school events. But survival and adjustment are not the same. The real problem is not that normal life is difficult. It is that it feels unreal in ways you cannot explain to anyone who was not there. You stand in a grocery store while someone argues over something trivial, and part of your mind is still calibrated to compounds, rooftops, hallways, and the invisible math of threat. The body is present, the nervous system is not fully convinced. You are living in one world, while parts of you remain organized around another. That distance touches everything: marriage, parenting, sleep, silence. The people who love you can sense the absence even when you are physically in the room. You want to explain it, but explanation fails because language fails. Too much of that life was built on compression, on instinct, on decisions made too quickly and under too much pressure to translate neatly into conversation afterward. So you simplify. You say you are tired. You say work was fine. You say nothing that would force the real memories into daylight. Maybe you talk to a therapist. Maybe the culture has improved enough to allow that without shame. Maybe it helps. But even then, the deepest understanding usually comes from the same place it always did. Other men from the unit. The ones who do not need the whole story because they already know the shape of it. They know why you sit facing the door. They know what certain silences mean, so you stay in touch. Calls, quiet meetings, shared jokes that sound ordinary to everyone else. And in those moments, you understand something important. You may have left the unit, but in certain ways, the unit never truly leaves you. And somewhere right now, another young sergeant is standing in front of a notice that does not look important enough to change a life. He has already done more than most men around him. He has deployments behind him, scars he does not explain, and the dangerous confidence that comes from knowing he has performed well where failure had consequences. That is exactly why the notice reaches him. He does not yet understand what the path truly truly costs. He sees the challenge first, the selection, the mystery, the chance to stand closer to the sharpest edge of the profession than he has ever stood before. What pulls him is the same thing that has always pulled men like him, the need to know. Not whether the work is glamorous, not whether anyone will ever know his name, only whether he is enough. That question is older than the unit itself, and Delta has always known how to answer it. So he will show up on the date they gave him. He will step into the silence, into the mountains, into the machinery that will measure him without comfort or ceremony. Most will not make it. A few will, and the ones who do will disappear into a life the public will barely understand, carrying out missions that leave almost no trace except in the men who survive them. This is the part most people misunderstand about a life like this. The lesson is not that only the strongest men survive. It is that strength without purpose burns out, and skill without discipline destroys itself. Delta does not just reward aggression, it rewards control, patience, judgment, and the ability to carry pressure without letting it poison the mission. That may be the real difference between elite and ordinary. Not courage alone, but composure when courage is no longer enough. And the future of this world will likely become even more complex. The missions may change, technology will change, surveillance will improve, drones, signals intelligence, and AI will keep reshaping how targets are found and fixed. But one thing probably will not change. At the center of it, there will still be a man stepping into uncertainty, forced to make impossible decisions in seconds and live with them for years. So what do you think matters more in a unit like this? Physical toughness, mental discipline, or the ability to live with silence afterward? And if you had the chance, would you walk toward a life like this knowing the cost? Share your thoughts and your perspective in the comments. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share the video.